Hey guys, MrPokke here, back with another video, and for today's content, we are gonna be going through the only right answer for your 5-star standard selector that we are gonna be getting. Because as you guys will know, as of the time of this recording right now, we should have gotten the free 20 limited summons from the developers. Then tomorrow, we are gonna be getting our free 5-star standard selector that everyone can get right now. So on top of this, we are also gonna be getting another standard 5-star selector, which are gonna be able to get from pulling the standard banner 80 times, right? So technically speaking, in Wuthering Waves, at the start of the game, within roughly 1 week, which is where you should be able to allocate like 80 pulls plus 50 from beginner banner, so 130 pulls, to get 2 standard 5-star selectors. And how exactly should you guys go ahead and use and who should you guys exactly pick for? And without further ado, let's get into today's content. Subscribe! So, gamers, the only answer for your standard selector, there's only 5 choices, right? There's only 5. You either pick Lingyang, Calcharo, Encore, Jianxin, or Verina, right? So the options in Wuthering Waves, they are extremely limited. And CN has basically narrowed down to a very simple thought process that it will pretty much answer your questions completely, right? So there's really only one answer. Sorry, before we continue, there is 2 answers. The first answer is, if you do not care about meta, if you are a collector, if you're a waifu enjoyer, if you're a husbando enjoyer, if you want to look at Jianxin's massive abobas, if you want to play with Calcharo's nuclear apps and packs, or if you're into like Lingyang, feel free to go ahead and pick your preferred pick, right? Because at the end of the day, these are standard 5-star units. Do not expect them to scale very well into maybe 6 months, 1 year down the road, as you can see from pretty much every single gacha game you have played, right? You have played Genshin Impact, you have played Honkai Star Rail. Almost every single one of the 5-star standard units, after a while, they will get eventually power crept by the later limited 5-star version, right? So whoever you're going to pick here, in the grand scheme of things, it does not matter. So the number 1 answer is, pick the person that you like and someone that you don't want to start a new game plus by playing them, right? But with that aside, from a more meta perspective, if you picked up your main DPS, so either Calcharo, Encore, Lingyang, or Jian, you picked up any of these 4 main DPS from your first beginner 50 summons, then the right answer is going to be Verina. Because she is our only unit in this game that acts as a sustain / support aside from Baichi, and she pretty much outclasses Baichi in every way possible. She even has a built-in revive just like Bailu from her tracers later in the game, right? So Verina, it is definitely going to be the most meta pick. I think by now most of the other content creators have told you the same thing as well, so I'm not going to repeat myself. Just something to keep in mind is that even if you pick Verina, you can still feel free to go ahead and build your Baichi, because Baichi is gonna be the only other unit that can sustain. And in the current endgame content, you need 3 teams. For the Tower of Adversity, you need 3 different teams to tackle all 3 different towers, right? So because of this, you are definitely gonna be running both Verina and Baichi. And I guess if you are somebody that wants to rush the Tower of Adversity as fast as humanly possible, so exactly what I mean by this, if you can just go over here. Okay, so basically the endgame version of Spiral Abyss or Memory of Chaos or whatever you call it, the Tower of Adversity, the experiment zone, the hazard zone, is where there's gonna be 3 different floors. And because of the way Wuthering Waves implement the stamina system, once you deplete your unit stamina, you cannot use them for the next tower any longer, which means you pretty much have to build 3 teams by the time you want to tackle this content. No questions asked, right? And as we know by now, as for the team building aspect of Wuthering Waves, having a healer sustain is not a must, but it makes your life infinitely easier. Just like how, do you want to run a no sustain comp in Honkai Star Rail? You want to just go all in damage? Then your damage better be good enough to do the 0 cycle. Otherwise, you're just going to get clapped, which is not going to be something you're going to be doing for majority of the casual audience, right? So if you're going to be playing this game on a normal spectrum, then having this support / sustain is absolutely pivotal. So getting Verina will not diminish the value of your Baichi, right? Unless they release future 5-star sustains, but from our current drip marketing, it's going to be Jiyan into Yinlin into another 2 more units. We don't really know what they are, but you know, stay tuned to find out. So that is going to be that. Number 1 pick gonna be Verina for the meta pick if you pick any of this DPS over here, right? So yep. From a meta perspective, the difference between Encore, Lingyang, Calcharo, it is not in a sense where one unit is completely unplayable compared to the other unit. This is specifically towards this whole Ling Yang issue, where a lot of players, the moment you get Ling Yang, just reroll, right? It is not like he's completely unplayable. The problem is they just have different playstyles. So theoretically speaking, there are damage differences. It is not to a point where one unit is infinitely better than the other unit, especially for a 5-star. It's just that their playstyles are very, very different. For Calcharo, you want to spam your skills into heavy attack and you swap out and wait for your cooldown to up. Just like how, okay, I have to use league references, but Calcharo is basically Z, right? Calcharo is basically Z. You spam your shurikens, you spam your shadow, you spam your skill. The moment you finish your combos, he doesn't do any damage. So you need to swap out to another unit, wait for your cooldowns and go back again. So that's going to be Calcharo. Ling Yang is basically like your ADC. He's like your Vayne, right? Actually, Vayne's not a good example. Okay, he's like Set. Ling Yang is basically like Set, right? You can keep going and you can keep basic attacking. His kit is fundamentally tied to spamming his skill, weaving his basic attacks with his skill to alternate them, right? As well as the lion dance, he can jump all around the place. So he's somewhat like a consistent DPS. The issue with Ling Yang is that his whole lion dance mechanic, where he can go upstairs and go downstairs and go aerial, it is not very comfortable to pilot. So it feels very, very different from our traditional class of DPS, right? So that's going to be for Ling Yang. And then for Encore, she's basically like your typical AD carry, right? She's your Vayne, she's your Ezreal, she's your Jinx. She attacks from far distance, and then towards the end, when your bar is filled, you can press and hold your heavy attack to do this little charge, like a little like self-destruct, like a Volchop, right? Then you can swap into another character for her thing to detonate, to have no DPS downtime, and then you switch back into Encore to build up again. So all these units, they have very different playstyles, but it doesn't mean that one playstyle is infinitely better than the other, because at the end of the day, if you want to clear content in Wuthering Waves, you can definitely do so with any of these 5-star DPSs, right? You might be wondering, where is Jianxin? I'm going to talk about her later, but TLDR, you pull for any of these DPS, the best pick for you, meta perspective, is going to be Verina. So that's going to be that. Alright, now, what if you picked up Verina from the beginner pools? Right, your first 50 pools, you got a free random 5-star, and your 5-star is Verina. So at this point, you can choose either Encore, Ling Yang, or Calcharo. Like I mentioned, these DPSs, they are not fundamentally infinitely better than the other. Even the developers, they have nerfed the values for Calcharo a lot from the previous beta because his damage was really high. But now they are in a sense where, in terms of comfort level, I have not played with Ling Yang before. I have tried Encore in the CBT2, and for Calcharo right now, he seems to fit very well with what I'm playing because, okay, I play that a lot. Also, you just spam your skills into heavy attack, you swap out and go back in. So he feels very clean to use. Ling Yang, I believe it is not as clean, or rather, it's a very different way of piloting. But it's not to say that if you guys want to play Ling Yang, right? If any one of you guys out there, you guys like how Ling Yang works, you guys like the whole lion dance, you guys have to go up and down, you guys have the aerial combat, spamming basic attack moves, just dealing out consistent damage with Ling Yang, close quarter consistent damage, then you can go ahead and just still choose him. It's not that bad, right? Or if you want to play a little bit more safe, Encore is going to be a range DPS. You can go ahead and pick Encore. They're all excellent main DPSs in this game, right? So yeah, any of these things is gonna work. Me personally, Calcharo is gonna be my pick. But I have a choice. The game gave me Calcharo, so I'll just use Calcharo. Or if you want to just pick up Jiyan. So if you are gonna be picking up Jiyan from the standard banner, not the standard, from the limited banner, you are already summoning Jiyan. It doesn't mean that you can forsake, or rather not choose a DPS, because like I mentioned at the start of the video, you still need to ultimately build up 3 different teams. You still need to build up 3 different teams on any content, so it doesn't really impact you that much if you put for Jiyan, you have Verina, and you're thinking, okay, should I just go for Verina dupes? Generally speaking, putting for a more diversified team comp in Wuthering Waves is more recommended, because not only do you need 3 teams for the end content, there is also a lot of enemies in this game that are highly resistant to certain elements, right? There's Electro Res, Fire Res, Havoc Res, or some enemies are just straight up immune, such as the little slime, goblet, don't know, rock kind of things. So building a diverse pool of units in Wuthering Waves is going to be quite important. So Jiyan, he has his own element. You can use any of these other units because they're all different elements, right? Jiyan is going to be the wind element, and then all these 3, they're going to be fire, ice, as well as electric, right? So just for the elemental diversity, you can still go ahead and pick up your standard 5-star DPS units. So yep, that's pretty much it. Now, this is somewhat related to the team building aspect. I will cover this in a separate video into exactly how do you construct, or how exactly do you form a team in Wuthering Waves. But TLDR, as usual, 1 main DPS, 1 sub DPS, 1 support assistant. And this slot is always going to be Verina / Baichi, which is why the value for Verina right now is incredibly high, because pretty much no one can replace her, or rather there's only 2 healers in this game, either Verina or Baichi. So 99 point, not even 100%, every single team you see in the game, you're probably going to be running them unless you go for a more niche team, such as if you're playing Danjing with like a no-hit setup. You can pair up with Tao Qi, and then you don't really need to run a sustain anymore because your Danjing you're just not going to hit, and Tao Qi will be your pseudo sustain with a shield, right? So there are some niche comps that you don't need your healers, but every other mainstream comp you're going to be running them, right? So that's going to be the general team building. And then let's talk about Calcharo and Yinlin. Now this is a point that was brought up in the previous CBT, especially in the CN server, where Calcharo and Yinlin, they had incredible synergy with one another. Specifically, because they are both complementary of each other with their intro and outro skills, Yinlin can also apply the mark for that target to just do even more damage. And the rotation, like I mentioned for Calcharo, right? You spam his abilities, you swap out to the next unit to wait for his cooldown to come back up, and then you swap back to Calcharo again. Yinlin perfectly fits the time with the Calcharo's skill cooldown. So during the time when Calcharo's skill is down, you swap into Yinlin to apply her marks, to apply her basic attacks, and apply all of her heavy. The moment you're done with Yinlin's combo, you then swap back to Calcharo to instantly fit back into his skill cooldown again. So it's a very seamless experience in CBT3, and this team was arguably the strongest team that our players have experienced in CBT3, at least for the CN community. In fact, one of the only players in CN that actually did a full 3-star clear in Tower Adversity, he used this team, right? This is one of the only content creators in CN to do a full 3-star clear running only 2 units. Calcharo and Yinlin only. He blood didn't even run a sustain, just beat the shit out of the boss, no sustain, 2-man, and still did a 3-star clear, right? So the power of this team in the last CBT was extremely strong, especially with the Yinlin and Calcharo. But that being said, these were from the last beta of Wuthering Waves, and the values for Calcharo, he has been adjusted in the current open version of the game, and we don't really know what is Yinlin's values going to be like. So do lower your expectations thinking Calcharo and Yinlin is going to be completely tier 0, absolutely busted, right? There's a good chance that you might not see as much success in the current stage of the game compared to CBT3, right? He is the only CBT3 to do a first 3-star clear and all that. So just lower your expectations a little bit, because the values from CBT, the last CBT, is going to be different from the open world, right? So that is going to be the overall consensus on the whole Calcharo plus Yinlin synergy. But that being said, even though the values were nerfed, the synergy between Yinlin and Calcharo will still be there, right? They're still going to synergize with one another. It's just that it might not be as strong compared to the previous version. Also, he also made this point over here. Calcharo alone, his DPS is not going to reach T0. He still kind of need the support of, for example, Yinlin to reach where he wants to be, which is like the OP stage. So do lower expecting that Calcharo is the strongest 5-star standard DPS, right? He is not exactly the strongest, it's just that he fits very well with Yinlin, which is why the combined damage towards the end is going to be extremely strong, which further cements why players were recommending players to creators were recommending players to take either Verina or Calcharo. But yeah, take that as you will. Okay, another point over here is Yinlin, she can also be used with other teammates, because even though she does have the electro damage, if you use her with other teams, you can combine her with Sanhua to do considerable damage themselves, because Sanhua does buff a basic attack deepen for a 36% or 30%, and this benefits Yinlin by quite a bit. So even without Calcharo, Yinlin herself as a unit is still going to be performing. So if players are thinking of getting Calcharo as their standard 5-star DPS only for the sake of pairing up with Yinlin, you don't really have to, because rest assured, Yinlin can still work with other sub DPS sustains, right? So that's going to be that. This part is basically them saying, should you be pulling for dupes in this game? Should you be pulling for idolants in this game? So we should say, if you already have Verina, if you already have Calcharo, right, and you have 2 more, like you got really lucky, you lost a 50-50, so now you have like a E0 Verina and E0 Calcharo. Should you be using your 2 standard selectors for maybe like a E1 Calcharo and E0 Verina, or maybe an E2 Calcharo, or like a E2 Verina, or like should you use your selectors for dupes? Like I mentioned at the start of the video, generally speaking, it is not really recommended, right? You can see here, it is not recommended, because at the end of the day, endgame, Tower of Adversity, you need 3 teams. You need 2 to 3 teams. So having a diversified pool of units is always going to be better for your account. And most of the islands in this game, it doesn't really impact your damage that much, or at least not as much as your weapons, your echoes, or everything, right? Especially in the early game when you just want to clear, the important things wouldn't be your islands. Even if you have a E1 Calcharo, if you have shitty relics, if you have shitty echoes, if you have shitty weapons, right? He's not going to be changing everything just because you got an E1 Calcharo or like an E2 Calcharo. So that's going to be there. Also, another point is there are some undiscovered team comps that players might talk about, and so this example is going to be Ling Yang, right? So Ling Yang, he, like I mentioned, he's not really been looked at, but there might be in the future where Wuthering Waves developers can come up with even more 5-star limited units like a sub DPS to make Ling Yang's aerial combat feel smoother or just make his kit feel more enhanced. So getting a diversified pool of units now, it kind of makes your account a little bit more future-proof because they're always going to make more units, whereas if you just get the same items of one unit, then they're pretty much just going to stagnate there for the most part, right? So that's also another thing to consider. Then there is one point, which is the only island that is, I guess, some players that you really want to consider, that if you really want to have islands, you really don't care about diversity, and the most future-proof, the most meta island is going to be Verina's E2. Because for Verina's E2, you do get this additional buff that grants 10 resonance energy. So this is the only E2 that is pretty much going to be universal because you're going to be running Verina every single, or rather 99% of the team comps, you're always going to be running her unless they release another sustain. And even if they release another sustain, you need 3 teams. So if you really want to think about islands, then this E2 should be something to consider. Other than that, it is not that recommended to pull for dupes in this game. I want to talk one last thing before we wrap up, which is you guys might have noticed so far there hasn't been a recommendation for a Jianxin pick, and you guys might be wondering why are they not recommending a Jianxin pick, right? So the answer is very simple. If you are going for comfort, Jianxin is gonna be the DPS that gives you comfort because she not only does damage, she gives your team a shield, and she has a pretty decent AoE for mobs. So for comfort wise, Jianxin is a very comfortable DPS / sub DPS hybrid. But I believe that when it comes to a more specialized role, CN don't really see this as much of a niche because she doesn't really feel the criteria of a main DPS, nor does she really feel the criteria of a sub DPS, because for sub DPS, there are a lot of 4-star sub DPS that do really well, right? Modify, Stanhua, in the future we release Yinlin. So she's in a very weird spot where she don't exactly fit a specialized niche where she can utilize her to the best of her ability. But that being said, there has been some cooks for Jianxin with specific units, because if you were to take a look at Jianxin's kit, if we take a look at Prywin over here, her outro skill is honestly not too bad. You have a 38% resonance liberation damage deepen for 14 seconds. So resonance liberation, it is pretty much like your ultimate, right? It is pretty much like your ultimate. Skill is your skill, liberation is your liberation, right? So she has this ultimate damage buff. We could see units in the future that can enhance this portion, but for now, we don't really have a DPS that utilizes a ultimate burst yet. So even for Jiyan, right? You guys see Jiyan's ultimate. Jiyan's ultimate, he summons for his enhanced ultimate, he summons this big ass dragon, and then he starts using his auto attacks. So this resonance liberations damage, it doesn't affect Jiyan except for that. The first instance of the ultimate burst. Everything else afterwards is all base attacks. Alright? Same thing for Calcharo. After Calcharo's initial burst, it is all base attacks. So the thing with the problem with Jianxin is that we don't have a DPS that can make use of this resonance burst damage. Right? So if in the future there's a DPS that can do like a nuclear out. For example, spoiler, Havoc MC has I believe a 1400% multiplier on the ultimate, if I'm not wrong. Okay, 1500% multiplier, which is, I believe is the highest in the game. And it is completely free. So I wouldn't be too surprised if people come up with a Jianxin plus a DPS that can abuse this ultimate damage. Havoc MC, it is kind of like a main DPS anyways, right? So the recharge is also relatively not too slow. So I wouldn't put it past Jianxin becoming a decent pick if you guys really want her. For now, we probably need a little bit more tests. And afterwards, you know, we just see how things go from there, right? So, yeah. So in summary, me personally, I'm not gonna be investing in, or rather using a selector yet. I just wanna let this game develop more and see what kind of team comps that players can come up with, because Wuthering Waves is a completely brand new game. And as much as we can theorycraft for even for like CB3, the open server of the game is not fully explored yet. And I'm pretty sure even units like Ling Yang, he can see pretty decent plays. I'm just waiting for someone out there to be a Ling Yang man and just do like a whole completely nuclear zero cycle, solo level 120 hologram boss or whatever, right? So I'm gonna wait and see. There's no rush to use a selector. You can still beat every single game with pretty much any of the 4-star unit you have, or the 5-star, whatever 5-star you have. So that's for me personally, right? And I believe that when we look at the more in-depth team comps, in-depth rotations, how exactly do you build teams around your different cooldowns, your resonance skills, your ultimates, your intro, outro, then we can have a clearer picture as to which of these 5-stars will suit your own personal playstyle, right? I think Wuthering Waves, their way of balancing this game is very interesting, which is not one unit is like insanely overpowered than another unit. It always just boils back down to a playstyle, similar to how Monster Hunter, you are using light bowgun or heavy bowgun or long sword or great sword, right? So it really depends. It is not saying that this unit is just completely unusable just because, you know, or like Ling Yang is just completely unusable because of the different players. So yeah, that's gonna wrap it up. Alright, so with that, we have come to the end of today's content. If you want to engage in any further discussion, leave it down in the comments below, or head on to the Discord, discord.g/Pokke Village. We're a very active community, talk about Honkai on a daily basis, talk about Wuthering Waves on a daily basis. Check out my stream, that's Twitter.com/Pokke, you can talk about stream every day. Schedule up on the Discord. So yeah, that's all we have today. All the best for GM pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.